Maya Collins had been invisible for so long that she knew exactly what invisibility sounded like. It sounded like crystal glasses clinking inches from her shoulder without anyone saying, "Excuse me." It sounded like millionaires discussing beauty while stepping around her as if she were a coat rack. It sounded like women in silk gowns asking where the restroom was without looking at her face, and men in custom tuxedos calling her sweetheart because they had not bothered to read the brass nameplate pinned to her black security blazer. That night, inside the Bellwether Museum of Fine Art, invisibility had never been more expensive. The private exhibition had been designed to impress the kind of people who did not wait in lines, pay for parking, or ask prices before buying things. The main gallery glowed under warm gold lighting. Champagne moved through the room on silver trays. A string quartet played beneath a marble staircase. Politicians, collectors, judges, heiresses, and men with bodyguards pretended to care about art while secretly measuring one another's power. At the center of the room hung the painting everyone had come to see, The Saint Beneath Glass. A woman in a white veil stood in the painting with her eyes lowered, one hand pressed to her heart, the other hidden in shadow. The brushwork was old, delicate, almost breathing. It was beautiful in a way that made the noisy room feel ashamed of itself. Maya had spent 3 weeks guarding that painting. She knew the alarm radius by heart. She knew the reflection pattern of the protective glass. She knew which guests leaned too close after too much champagne. And she knew, before anyone else noticed, when the man in the black suit crossed the invisible line. He moved differently from the others, not louder, not faster, just with a quiet certainty that made space open around him. Men shifted out of his path before they consciously realized they were doing it. Women turned their heads, then quickly turned away. Conversations thinned into whispers. Maya saw the black suit first, then the broad shoulders, then the tattoos disappearing beneath his cuffs when he adjusted one sleeve, then the face, hard, calm, beautiful, in a dangerous, unforgiving way. The man stopped in front of the painting. For several seconds, he simply stared at it, not the way collectors stared, with ownership in their eyes, not the way rich men stared, calculating value. He stared as if the painting had called him by name. Then he lifted his hand. Maya's body moved before fear could catch up. "Sir," she said, stepping directly between him and the painting. "Please don't touch the glass." The quartet missed a note. A champagne flute stopped halfway to a senator's mouth. The room did not quiet all at once. It died. The man's hand remained in the air, inches from her shoulder. Up close, Maya could see the scar along his knuckle, the expensive watch, the controlled stillness in his jaw. Behind him, 2 bodyguards turned their heads toward her with terrifying precision. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Someone else whispered, "Does she know who that is?" Maya did not. Not yet. All she knew was that his hand had crossed the protected boundary, and her job was to stop him. Her rent was late. Her supervisor hated her. Half the guests had treated her like a moving shadow all night, but the painting did not belong to any of them, and she was tired of watching people with money believe everything in the world was waiting to be touched. The man slowly lowered his hand. His eyes moved from the painting to her face. They were dark, not black exactly, more like deep brown glass held over a fire. "What is your name?" he asked. His voice was calm enough to be gentle. That made it worse. Maya lifted her chin. "Maya Collins, security." The woman standing nearest to them let out a small, horrified breath. Julian Crane, the chairman of the museum board, came rushing across the gallery with a smile too polished to be human. "Mr. Russo," Julian said, his voice warm and terrified at the same time. "Please forgive our staff. Miss Collins is enthusiastic. but I assure you she meant no disrespect." Maya felt the name move through the room like a blade. Russo. Dante Russo. She knew that name. Everyone in Philadelphia knew that name, even if they pretended not to. Russo Shipping, Russo Hotels, Russo Charity Foundations, Russo Restaurants along the river, Russo men in black SUVs idling outside federal courthouses. And, beneath all the legitimate businesses, if whispers were true, something older and darker. The Russo family. The kind of power people did not write down. Maya's mouth went dry. Julian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Miss Collins, apologize to Miss Russo." Maya looked at Dante. He was still watching her. Not angry, not amused, curious, dangerously curious. "I was doing my job," Maya said, though her voice was quieter now. A faint smile touched Dante Russo's mouth, but it did not soften his face. "No," he said. "You were doing more than that." Julian blinked. "Mr. Russo." Dante's eyes never left Maya. "You are the only person in this room brave enough to protect something that does not belong to you." No one moved. Maya felt heat climb her throat. She did not know if she had been praised, threatened, or marked. Dante slipped one hand into the pocket of his coat and drew out a small black card. He held it between two fingers, offering it to her. Maya did not take it. Something flashed in his eyes. Not offense, interest. Julian laughed nervously. "I'm sure Miss Collins has a post to return to. She can decide that herself," Dante said. The room froze again, but differently this time. Maya looked at the card, then at the painting, then at the rich people watching her like she was an animal that had wandered into a dining room. She took the card. Dante stepped back. His gaze moved once more to the painting, specifically to the lower corner where the saint's white veil disappeared into shadow. For a moment, the mask on his face almost cracked. Pain moved through his eyes so quickly Maya wondered if she imagined it. Then he turned and walked away. His bodyguards followed. The music resumed too late. The conversations returned too loudly. And Julian Crane gripped Maya's elbow hard enough to bruise. "In my office," he whispered. "Now." Maya did not get fired that night. That would have been too clean. Instead, Julian made her stand in his glass-walled office while he explained, with controlled cruelty, that people like her did not embarrass donors. People like her did not correct men who could fund entire wings. People like her did not confuse a polyester blazer with authority. "You are lucky," he said, leaning back behind his polished desk, "that Mr. Russo found your little performance charming." Maya stared at the floor. Her body was still shaking, but anger kept her upright. "I stopped him from touching a protected artwork," Julian smiled. "You stopped a man from making a donation larger than your lifetime income. That painting matters." "To whom?" he asked softly. "You?" That landed deeper than she wanted it to. Because yes, to her. Maya had loved museums since she was a child, back when her mother cleaned office buildings at night and sometimes brought her along because babysitters cost too much. On rare afternoons, they would stand outside museums they could not afford to enter, staring through glass doors at banners of exhibitions they would never see. When Maya grew up and got a job at Bellwether, even as security, it felt like being allowed inside a dream through the back entrance. She learned the galleries, the artists, the restoration schedules, the quiet places where grieving widows sat, the corners where schoolchildren gasped at color for the first time. Art mattered because it made strangers feel less alone, but Julian Crane would never understand that, so Maya said nothing. Julian dismissed her after midnight with a final warning. "One more mistake, Miss Collins, and you will never work in another museum in this city." Outside, rain had begun falling over Philadelphia. Maya pulled her coat tight, and walked 3 blocks to the bus stop under orange streetlights. Her feet hurt, her elbow ached where Julian had grabbed her. The black card Dante Russo had given her felt heavy in her pocket, though it weighed almost nothing. At the bus stop, she took it out. There was no title, no company, just a phone number, embossed in silver, and one word: Dante. Maya should have thrown it into the gutter. Instead, she slid it back into her pocket and told herself it was only because littering was wrong. The next morning, she arrived at the museum 20 minutes early and found news vans parked outside. At first, she thought someone had stolen the painting. Then she saw the headline on a reporter's tablet: Russo Holdings acquires Bellwether Museum in private board agreement. Maya stopped breathing. Inside, the museum was chaos. Staff members whispered in clusters. Administrators hurried through hallways. Donor portraits were being removed from the east corridor. A legal team occupied the conference room. Julian Crane stood near the marble staircase, pale with fury while speaking into his phone. Then Dante Russo walked through the front doors. No tuxedo this time. Black coat, black suit. No visible emotion. The museum changed around him. Security guards straightened. Executives stiffened. People who had dismissed Maya for years suddenly found urgent reasons not to stand between her and the entrance. Dante's eyes found hers across the lobby. He walked toward her. Maya wished, absurdly, that she had worn lipstick, then hated herself for wishing it. "Miss Collins," he said. "Mr. Russo." His gaze dropped briefly to her nameplate. Maya. The way he said it made her name feel less ordinary than usual. She folded her arms. "Did you buy the museum because I stopped you?" "Yes." Her mouth opened. He continued before she could speak. "And no, that is not an answer. It is the only honest one I have." Julian approached quickly, smiling like a man swallowing glass. "Mr. Russo, perhaps we should begin in the boardroom. There are delicate matters too. You touched her last night," Dante said. Julian stopped. The lobby went silent. Maya's pulse jumped. Julian's smile thinned. "Excuse me." Dante looked at Maya's elbow. She had not noticed the bruise was visible beneath her sleeve. "You put your hand on my security officer hard enough to leave a mark." My security officer. The words should have made her angry. They did. But something else moved beneath the anger, something warm and dangerous. Julian's face reddened. "That is a misunderstanding." Dante stepped closer to him. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "If you touch her again, the misunderstanding will become permanent." No one breathed. Maya stared at Dante, stunned. She should have been frightened by the threat. She was. But she had spent years being insulted in rooms where no one defended her, and some wounded part of her felt the defense before she could reject it. Dante turned back to her. "You will keep your position. Your salary will double. You will report to me until the internal audit is complete." Maya blinked. "Absolutely not." A ripple of shock went through the lobby. Dante looked almost pleased. "No, you don't get to buy my gratitude. I bought the museum, not me." For the first time, something like true amusement entered his eyes. "No," he said softly, "not you." Julian looked as if he might faint. Maya lowered her voice. "Why are you really here?" Dante's expression changed. The amusement vanished. His gaze moved past her, up the staircase, toward the closed gallery where the saint beneath glass waited under guard. "I'm here," he said, "because someone in this museum has been lying for 27 years. By noon, Maya understood 3 things. First, Dante Russo had not simply bought the museum. He had seized it through debt agreements, donor pressure, and legal clauses no one on staff fully understood. Second, Julian Crane was still chairman in title only, and he hated Maya now more than ever. Third, Dante did not care about the museum the way rich men cared about museums. He cared about one painting, the saint beneath glass. That afternoon, Dante summoned Maya to the conservation lab. She expected an interrogation, maybe a threat, maybe some cold demand that she explain why she had interfered with him the night before. Instead, she found him standing alone in the sterile white room, staring at the painting under examination lights. Without the gallery crowd around it, the artwork looked smaller, more vulnerable. The saint's face was serene, but the shadow behind her seemed darker than Maya remembered. Dante stood with his hands behind his back. He did not touch. Maya noticed that immediately. "You're rebehaving," she said before she could stop herself. His mouth curved slightly. "I learn quickly. Men like you usually don't. Men like me usually aren't corrected and allowed to live." Her stomach tightened. He glanced at her. That was not a threat. It sounded like one. Most truths do. She stepped closer to the examination table, heaping the painting between them. "Why does this painting matter to you?" Dante's eyes lowered to the saint's hidden hand. "My mother loved it." Maya was not expecting that. The answer was too simple. Too human. She was a collector? She was a painter. Maya looked at the canvas again. "This isn't signed by a woman." "No," Dante said. "That is one of the lies." The lab door opened before Maya could ask more. A woman entered wearing a cream suit, diamond earrings, and the kind of beauty that made people assume cruelty was elegance. "Dante," she said. His body went still, not tense exactly. Closed. "Mara." Maya looked between them. Mara Verone smiled at Maya, as if she were something found beneath a shoe. "So this is the guard." Dante's voice cooled. "This is Maya Collins. How sweet. Does she come with the building?" Maya felt the insult, but she refused to flinch. Dante moved one step closer to Mara. The air sharpened. "You will speak about her with respect." Mara laughed softly. "Already? That is unlike you." Something passed between them. History. Threat. An old arrangement, maybe. Mara looked at Maya again, and this time the smile did not reach her eyes. "Be careful, Miss Collins. Dante has a habit of becoming fascinated by things right before they are destroyed." Then she turned and left. The door closed behind her with a whisper. Maya exhaled. "Who was that?" Dante did not answer immediately. "A mistake my family almost made permanent." "Your ex?" "Worse." He looked back at the painting. "A woman who believes marriage is just another kind of war. Maya should have let it go. She didn't. Were you going to marry her?" "Yes." The answer hit her strangely. She had known Dante Russo for less than 24 hours. She had no right to feel anything, but something inside her tightened anyway. "Why didn't you?" His eyes came back to hers. "Because last night, for the first time in years, someone stood between me and something I wanted." The room became too quiet. Maya looked away first. That evening, the first threat arrived. It was not dramatic. No gunshot, no masked man, just an envelope slipped under the security office door. Inside was a photo of Maya leaving her apartment that morning, taken from across the street. Written on the back in black ink were 6 words. "Walk away from Russo's dead woman." Maya stared at the photo until the edges blurred. She did not call Dante. She told herself she could handle it. She had handled everything else. Her mother's hospital bills before she died. Her father leaving. The landlord raising rent. Men laughing when she walked past. Women assuming she was hired help even when she was off duty. Supervisors who used her intelligence but denied her promotions. She could handle a threat. But when she left the museum after closing, Dante was waiting beside a black SUV in the rain. Of course he knew. Maya stopped under the portico. "Were you having me followed?" "Yes." Her anger rose fast. "You don't get to say that like it's normal." "It is normal in my world. I don't live in your world. You do now. No, she snapped. I work in a museum you apparently decided to conquer because of a painting and a ghost. That does not make me yours. Dante's face hardened at the word. For a second, she thought she had gone too far. Then he stepped closer, stopping just before the rain touched the polished stone between them. You are not mine, he said quietly. If you were, no one would have gotten close enough to photograph you. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared her away. Instead, it scared her because part of her wanted to step closer. I don't need protection, she said. Yes, Dante replied. You do. I need answers. His gaze darkened. Get in the car. No. A beat of silence. Behind him, one of his bodyguards shifted. Dante did not look away from her. Please, he said. The word was so controlled, so unfamiliar in his mouth, that Maya felt her anger stumble. I will take you somewhere safe, he continued, and I will tell you what the painting has to do with my mother. Rain struck the pavement behind him. Maya looked at the SUV, then at the empty street beyond it, then at the photo trembling in her hand. Finally, she walked past him and got into the car. Dante did not smile, but when he closed the door behind her, he stood in the rain for one extra second, as if he needed to breathe before sitting beside her. The safe house was not a house. It was a penthouse above the Schuylkill River, with floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood floors, warm lamps, and a view of Philadelphia glittering through rain. It felt too expensive to be safe. Maya stood near the entrance, refusing to take off her coat. Dante gave instructions to his men in low Italian, then dismissed them. When they were alone, he poured 2 glasses of water, not alcohol, and handed one to her. She did not drink. He noticed, You think I drug women in my own home? I don't know what you do. His jaw tightened. Fair. He set his glass down. My mother's name was Lucia Belandi, he said. She was a painter. Brilliant. Poor. Too proud to sell herself and too talented to be ignored. 27 years ago, she restored several works for the Bellwether Museum. Maya listened despite herself. She discovered that pieces moving through the museum's private collection were stolen. Not from estates. From families who had been killed, displaced, silenced. Art used to wash blood money clean. Julian Crane. Dante's eyes flashed. His father, and Mara Verone's family. Maya slowly lowered herself onto the edge of a leather chair. What happened to your mother? She disappeared. His voice remained calm, too calm. 3 days later, her body was found in the river. Maya's hand tightened around the glass. I'm sorry. Dante looked away from her sympathy as if it hurt more than cruelty. Before she died, she hid something. A ledger. Names, transfers, signatures, proof. She told my father it was inside a saint. The painting. Yes. But why wait 27 years? Because the painting vanished into private storage until Julian brought it out for this exhibition. Dante's gaze turned cold. And because anyone who searched too openly died before getting close. Maya stood. So last night, when you reached for the painting, I thought I saw her mark beneath the varnish, and I stopped you. Yes, she let out a humorless laugh. And now someone thinks I know something. Dante stepped toward her. Do you? No. He watched her. Suspicion returned to his face. Subtle but unmistakable. It hurt more than she expected. You think I'm part of this? I think everyone is part of something. Then why protect me? His eyes moved over her face slowly. Because when Julian told you to apologize, you didn't. Maya's throat tightened. That's not enough. No, he said. It isn't. The lights flickered once. Both of them looked up. Dante moved before Maya understood why. He crossed the room, caught her wrist, and pulled her behind him, just as the windows went black. with the reflection of approaching headlights. Below the penthouse, engines roared. His phone vibrated. He answered, listened. His expression changed. Then the first shot cracked against the glass. Maya screamed as the window fractured in a bright spiderweb above the river. Dante dragged her down behind the marble kitchen island. His body covered hers without hesitation. One arm braced over her head. More shots struck the reinforced glass. Not breaking through. Not yet. Maya's heart hammered so hard she could not hear herself think. Dante spoke into the phone, voice deadly calm. North entrance. 2 cars. Take one alive. Maya stared at him. He looked almost bored, except his hand at her back was shaking. Barely, but enough for her to feel it. You said this was safe, she whispered. It was. His eyes met hers in the dim light. Until you became more valuable than the painting. The attack ended in less than 3 minutes. To Maya, it felt like a lifetime. By the time the lights came back on, Dante's men had secured the building. The shooters were gone, except for one wounded man dragged into the underground garage. Dante did not let Maya see him. She did not ask what happened next. She already knew enough to be afraid. But fear became more complicated when Dante returned upstairs with blood on his knuckles and none on his suit. Maya stood by the cracked window, arms wrapped around herself. You hurt him, she said. Dante stopped. Yes. Did you kill him? No, she believed him. That frightened her too. He crossed the room slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. I need to move you somewhere else. No, Maya. No. Her voice broke, and she hated it. You don't get to pull me into a war, watch me get shot at, then decide where I go. I did not pull you into it. You bought my workplace, to protect evidence, to protect your revenge. He flinched. Not visibly to most people, but Maya saw it. Good, she thought. Let it hurt. You looked at me like I was brave, she said. But maybe I was just useful. Dante's silence answered before he did. Maya stepped back. There it was, the wound beneath the fantasy. She had not been chosen. She had been positioned. Dante's voice lowered. At first, yes. The honesty cut deeper than a lie. At first, he repeated, I needed to know why you saw the painting so clearly. Whether Julian planted you. Whether you knew about my mother's mark. And now? His eyes moved over her face with an intensity that made breathing difficult. Now I am trying to remember how to stand in a room without looking for you first. Maya froze. Dante seemed almost angry at himself for saying it. He turned away, one hand flexing at his side. I don't trust this, she whispered. You shouldn't. She laughed once, bitterly. That's your romantic confession? No. He looked back at her. That is my warning. The storm rolled over the windows. Between them stretched fear, attraction, grief, suspicion, and something neither of them was ready to name. Maya should have walked out. Instead, she stayed until dawn. Not because Dante asked her to, because for the first time in her life, someone's enemies believed she mattered. And maybe the most dangerous thing in the room was not the man with blood on his hands. Maybe it was the part of her that wanted to matter to him. The next week turned the scandal into a spectacle. A photo leaked from the museum lobby. Dante Russo staring at Maya Collins like the rest of the world had disappeared. The headline wrote itself. Mafia billionaire buys museum after curvy guard humiliates him. By noon, Maya's face was everywhere. Talk. Shows laughed. Comment sections were cruel. Anonymous donors called the museum demanding that she be removed. Someone edited her body into memes. A gossip blogger called her Russo's charity obsession. Maya sat in the employee locker room with her phone turned face down, listening to 2 co-workers whisper outside the door. She must have done something. Men like him don't look at women like her for no reason. Maya closed her eyes. That was the part that always hurt. Not the insult itself. The assumption that desire had rules she did not qualify for. When she opened the locker room door, Dante was standing in the hallway. The two co-workers went silent. Maya's stomach sank. You cannot keep appearing everywhere. I'm humiliated. I can. That wasn't permission. His eyes softened almost imperceptibly. No, it wasn't. He held out her coat. Come with me. Where? To end the story they are telling about you. She should have refused. Instead, she followed him through a side entrance into a waiting SUV, past cameras and shouting reporters. Dante brought her to an underground art vault beneath an old hotel near Rittenhouse Square. The entrance was hidden behind a private wine cellar. Armed men guarded steel doors. The air smelled cold, dry, expensive. Inside the vault were paintings, dozens of them, some covered in cloth, some glowing, under low light. Maya forgot to be angry. These are stolen, she whispered. Recovered, Dante said. From whom? Men. Worse than me. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be. He led her to a smaller room at the back. On one wall hung a painting of a young woman holding a baby beside a window. The brushwork was tender, unfinished around the edges. Maya stepped closer. The woman in the painting had Dante's eyes. My mother painted that, he said. Maya's voice softened. Is the baby you? Dante nodded once. The silence changed. Maya looked at the painting, then at the man beside her. In the museum, he was a threat. In the penthouse, he was control. Here, beneath the city, surrounded by stolen beauty and old ghosts, he looked like a boy who had built an empire around an absence. You loved her, Maya said. His jaw tightened. I barely remember her. That's not what I said. He stared at the painting. For once he had no answer. Maya moved closer to the canvas. In the lower corner, near the painted window, was a tiny mark hidden in the brushstroke. A bell, not a signature, a symbol. Lucia Belandi, Maya whispered. Belandi, like Mara. Dante looked at her. My mother was born into the Belandi family, he said. A minor branch. Poor enough to be useful, blood enough to be trapped. When she married my father, she became Russo property in their eyes. When she exposed the stolen art network, she became a liability. And Mara, her cousin's daughter. Maya's stomach turned. The woman you almost married comes from the family that helped cover up your mother's death. Yes. Why would you agree to that? His eyes went cold again. Because revenge sometimes requires sitting at the same table as the people who fed your mother to the river. Maya stepped back. There he was, the monster people whispered about. Not loud, not cruel for pleasure, but patient, capable of waiting years to destroy someone completely. You were going to marry Mara to get access to her family's records, Maya said. Yes. And now? Dante looked at her. Now she thinks you are the reason I want. Maya let that settle. Jealousy had painted a target on her back. Not love, not yet. Just the appearance of it. You need to tell the press. I mean nothing to you, she said. No, Dante. His name left her mouth before she could stop it. Something in his face changed at the sound. No, he repeated. Softer now. Why? Because it would be a lie. Maya's pulse thudded. He stepped closer, stopping just beyond touching distance. Always stopping. Always as if restraint was a physical chain he forced himself to wear. I don't know what you mean to me, he said, but it is not nothing. Maya swallowed. And what am I supposed to do with that? Run, if you are wise. She looked at the paintings around them. The hidden vault. The armed men beyond the door. The man who could buy museums and still looked lost in front of his mother's face. I have never been wise around beautiful things, she said quietly. Dante's eyes dropped to her mouth. The moment stretched, near enough for warmth, far enough for denial. Then his phone rang. He answered without looking away from her. His expression changed. Maya knew before he spoke that the world had broken again. "They opened the painting," Dante said. Maya went cold. "Who?" "Julian." By the time they reached the museum, the conservation lab was a crime scene without police. Not because there was no crime, because Dante did not trust the police. The painting lay on the examination table, frame removed, backing disturbed. The canvas itself remained unharmed, but the rear lining had been cut. The ledger was gone. Maya stood in the doorway, sick with anger. Julian Crane appeared behind a cluster of lawyers and museum executives, his face arranged into offended dignity. "This is what happens when criminals take over cultural institutions," he announced loudly. "A priceless work has been endangered under Mr. Russo's ownership." Dante said nothing. That silence terrified the room more than yelling would have. Maya moved toward the table and examined the cut backing. Clean blade, careful angle, someone who knew conservation procedure. Then she saw something that made her pause. A trace of white cotton thread stuck near the stretcher bar. Not from the painting, from museum gloves. She turned slowly toward Julian. "You didn't take it during the break-in," she said. His eyes flicked to her. Small, fast, enough. "You took it before Dante ever bought the museum." The room went silent. Julian smiled. "Miss Collins, I understand recent attention has been overwhelming, but perhaps leave serious matters too. The backing was already weakened before we moved it into the lab," Maya said. "That's why you panicked when Dante got close at the exhibition. You weren't afraid he'd touch the glass. You were afraid he'd see the corner wasn't sealed properly." Dante looked at her. So did everyone else. Maya stepped closer to the painting. "And you didn't find what you wanted, did you?" Julian's smile faded. Dante's voice was quiet. "Maya." She looked at the saint's hidden hand, at the shadow, at the place Dante had reached for that first night. "The ledger was never in the backing," she said. "Your mother was smarter than that." Her heart pounded. She had looked at the painting for weeks, but always as a guard watching distance, glass, motion. Now she looked as someone listening. The saint's visible hand pressed to her heart. The hidden hand disappeared into shadow. Not empty shadow. A painted fold. Maya leaned closer. "The hand," she whispered. Dante stepped beside her. Maya pointed without touching. "There's a raised line under the pigment. Not a brush stroke. Something beneath the paint." Julian's face drained. Dante saw it. And in that instant, everyone understood. The real secret was still inside the saint. Mara Verone arrived 15 minutes later. She entered with cameras. Reporters flooded the lobby behind her, invited by someone who wanted a public spectacle. Mara stood beneath the marble staircase in a blood-red coat and looked directly at Maya. "You poor thing," she said, voice sweet enough for microphones. "Do you really think Dante Russo protects women? He collects them, like paintings, like debts, like wounds." Maya stood beside Dante at the top of the stairs, aware of every camera turning toward her. Dante's hand hovered near her lower back, not touching. Waiting. That almost broke her. Mara smiled wider. "Ask him why he kept you close. Ask him how many people he has used as bait. Ask him whether his mother was worth more to him alive or as an excuse for war." Dante's face became stone, but Maya felt the violence move through him. Not action yet. Potential. The whole lobby held its breath. Maya could have stepped away from him. Maybe she should have. Instead, she moved down one stair. The cameras followed. "I don't know what Dante Russo is," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "But I know what you are." Mara's eyes narrowed. Maya looked at the reporters. "You came here to humiliate a security guard because you're afraid of a painting." Silence. Then flashes exploded. Mara's smile vanished. Dante looked at Maya as if she had just stepped in front of a bullet. Maybe she had. That night, he came to her apartment, not inside. He waited across the street in the rain. Maya watched from her second-floor window for 20 minutes before going down. He stood beside the black SUV, coat darkened by rain, hair damp, face lifted toward her window like a man waiting outside a church he had no right to enter. "You're going to get pneumonia," she said when she reached the sidewalk. "I've survived worse. I'm sure that sounded charming in your head." A faint curve touched his mouth, then disappeared. "I should not have let Mara speak to you. You don't let women like Mara do anything. She does what she wants. She will not hurt you again, Dante." He looked at her. "I am not asking you to punish every person who hurts my feelings. She threatened your life. She also told the truth." Rain moved between them. His face closed. Maya hated that she could recognize it now, the moment he retreated into the version of himself that could not bleed. "You used me at first," she said. "Yes, you suspected me. Yes, you were willing to keep me close because it helped your revenge. Yes." The answers hurt because he did not decorate them. Maya's eyes burned. "And somewhere in the middle of that, you decided you cared?" "No." She flinched. Dante stepped forward, pain flashing across his face. "I did not decide," he said. "That is the problem." Maya looked up at him. Rain clung to his lashes. He looked less like an untouchable king and more like a man at the edge of something he could not control. "I have made decisions my entire life," he said. "Who lives, who pays, who disappears, who sits at my table, and who never rises from it. But this?" His voice lowered. "Looking for you in every room, wanting to stand between you and the world, hating every man who makes you feel small, remembering the sound of your voice telling me no. I did not choose that, Maya." Her breath trembled. He raised his hand slowly, stopped before touching her cheek. His restraint was more intimate than contact. "If I touch you," he said, "I need you to know it will not be because I forgot myself." Maya whispered. "Then why?" "Because you asked." The city seemed to quiet. Maya should have walked away. Instead, she stepped closer until her cheek met his waiting hand. Dante closed his eyes, just for a second, as if that small permission had undone him more than violence ever could. The kiss did not happen. A black sedan turned the corner too fast. Dante's eyes opened. His hand dropped. "Inside," he ordered. This time, Maya did not argue. The first bullet struck the SUV behind him. Dante shoved Maya behind a parked car as glass shattered across the wet street. His men returned fire from the curb. Neighbors screamed. A streetlight sparked overhead. Maya pressed her hands over her ears, shaking. Dante crouched in front of her, gun in hand, body between her and the street. The man who had almost touched her like a vow now looked ready to burn the city down. When the shooting stopped, one of Dante's men dragged a phone from the fallen attacker's coat. Dante looked at the screen. His expression turned lethal. Maya knew the answer before he said it. "Julian Crane sent them," Dante said. The next morning, Maya disappeared. Not because Dante told her to, because she finally understood the game. Julian and Mara expected her to hide behind Dante. They expected her to be the weak spot, the woman used as bait. The soft thing men could threaten to move harder men. Maya was tired of being useful only as someone's vulnerability. So she went to the museum before dawn through the staff entrance no one important ever used. She knew every camera blind spot because she had spent years being paid to watch them. She knew which door stuck in the east corridor. She knew which restoration cabinet had an old ultraviolet lamp no one had replaced because the board said the budget was too tight. And she knew the painting. Dante's men arrived 20 minutes after her, furious and terrified. Dante arrived 5 minutes after that. He found her in the conservation lab with the lights off, the ultraviolet lamp glowing blue over the saint's hidden hand. Maya. His voice was not loud, but she heard fear inside it. She did not look away from the painting. You were right about your mother. Dante stopped. Maya pointed to the saint's shadowed hand. Under ultraviolet light, the paint revealed what normal eyes could not see. Tiny lines, numbers, initials, not a ledger hidden inside the canvas. A ledger painted into it. Lucia Belandi had turned evidence into art. Dante came closer slowly. For the first time since Maya met him, his face completely broke. The names were there. Crane, Verone, Belandi, judges, donors, shipping routes, dates, and at the bottom, a message written so small it looked like texture. Dante leaned closer. Maya read it aloud softly. For my son, if he survives them. The room went still. Dante placed one hand on the edge of the table, not touching the painting, his shoulders lowered as if 27 years had finally landed on him. Maya wanted to reach for him. She didn't know if she had the right. Then he whispered. She knew they would kill her. Maya's heart cracked. Yes. Dante bowed his head. No tears. No sound. But grief moved through him like something ancient and violent. Maya stepped beside him. She left you the truth. His voice was rough. Truth does not bring back the dead. No, Maya said, but it can stop the living from becoming ghosts. He looked at her then, and whatever he saw on her face made his control falter. He touched her hand, just her fingers. A question. Maya answered by linking them with his. For one stolen moment, the Mafia war, the museum, the painting, the cameras, the enemies, all of it fell away. Then the lab doors opened. Julian Crane stood there with 6 armed men. Mara Verone stood beside him, and behind them, one of Dante's own captains held a gun aimed at Dante's back. Betrayal had a familiar face. His name was Enzo. Dante did not turn immediately. His hand tightened around Maya's. Enzo, he said. The captain's voice was strained. I'm sorry. No, Dante replied. You were not, Julian smiled. Gone, was the polished donor. This was the man beneath the tuxedo. Cold, greedy, afraid. Step away from the painting, Mr. Russo. Dante slowly turned, moving Maya behind him. Mara sighed. Still hiding women behind your body. So primitive. Maya's fear sharpened into anger. Julian aimed his gun at the painting. The evidence ends tonight. If you shoot that canvas, Maya said, you destroy the only thing keeping the press outside from wondering why you came here armed before sunrise. Julian's eyes flicked to her. Maya smiled, though her whole body trembled. Yes, she said. I called them. Mara's face changed. Outside the lab, distant voices rose. Reporters. Police. Museum staff. Dante looked at Maya with something like awe. Julian recovered quickly. Then, we take her. Dante moved before the sentence ended. The room exploded. Not into chaos. Into precision. Dante struck Enzo first, disarming him with brutal efficiency. Maya ducked as glass shattered behind her. One of Julian's men lunged for the painting. Maya grabbed the ultraviolet lamp and swung it hard into his wrist. The weapon clattered across the floor. Dante's bodyguards stormed the corridor. Mara screamed orders. Julian grabbed Maya from behind. Cold metal pressed against her throat. Everything stopped. Dante turned. The violence drained from his face, leaving something worse. Fear. Not for himself. For her. Julian dragged Maya backward. Move, and she dies. Dante lowered his gun. Maya felt Julian's arm tighten around her. Her own breath came fast and shallow. Dante's eyes locked on hers. He was telling her, without words, not to fight. For once, she ignored him. because she knew the museum. She knew the floor. She knew the small brass stanchion Julian had not noticed behind his heel. Maya shifted her weight and drove her foot backward into his knee. Julian cursed, stumbling. The gun moved. Dante fired. Not at Julian's head. At his shoulder. The shot cracked through the lab, loud enough to tear the world in half. Julian fell. Maya hit the floor. Dante was there before she could inhale, pulling her into his arms, his body curved around hers as if he could shield her from what had already happened. "Look at me," he said. "I'm okay. Look at me." She did. His hands held her face with terrifying gentleness. For once, he did not ask permission before touching her. For once, she did not want him to. "I'm okay," she repeated. His forehead lowered to hers. Around them, men shouted. Mara was restrained in the corridor. Enzo was bleeding from the mouth, handcuffed by Dante's own guards. Julian groaned on the floor, alive and ruined. The painting remained untouched under blue light. Lucia Belandi's truth glowed in the dark, and Dante Russo, feared by everyone in Philadelphia, held Maya Collins like losing her would have ended whatever remained of his soul. The scandal did not fade. It detonated. By the end of the week, the Bellwether Museum was on every national news channel. Julian Crane was arrested on charges that reached far beyond art fraud. Mara Veroni vanished for 3 days before being found on a private airfield, attempting to flee the country. Judges resigned. Donors denied everything. The Belandi and Varone families began devouring themselves in public statements and private threats. Dante Russo did not give interviews. Maya did. She sat beneath soft studio lights in a navy dress she had bought on sale, her hands folded in her lap, her heart pounding as a famous journalist asked what it felt like to be the woman Dante Russo bought a museum for. Maya looked straight into the camera. "He didn't buy it for me," she said. "He bought it because powerful people thought beauty belonged only to them. They were wrong." The clip went viral. This time the comments were different. Some still cruel, many not. Women wrote that they cried. Museum guards wrote that they had never felt seen. Curvy women wrote that Maya had stood in a room full of people who underestimated her and refused to shrink. Dante watched the interview from the back of the studio, unseen by cameras. Afterward, he waited in the hallway. Maya walked toward him slowly. "You didn't interrupt," she said. "You didn't need me to." That answer stayed with her longer than any compliment could have. For weeks, they lived in the strange aftermath of danger. Dante dismantled alliances with the patience of a man trained by grief. Maya worked with federal investigators, museum staff, and restoration experts to preserve Lucia's painting. The museum board was dissolved. A foundation was created. Former staff members who had been ignored, underpaid, and silenced were invited to testify. Maya was offered a new position, Director of Protective Collections. She laughed when she read the title because it sounded too important for a woman who still worried about bus fare out of habit. Then she accepted. Dante did not ask her to move in. He did not demand. He did not assume the danger had earned him her heart. That was the part that undid her. He gave her space. He sent security, but only after asking. He appeared at museum events, but never stood close enough for cameras to turn her work into his possession. He called every night at 10, 17, not 10, 15, not 10, 30, 10, 17, because that was the time she had once admitted she usually got home from the late shift. Sometimes they spoke for an hour, sometimes for 3 minutes. Sometimes he only said, "Are you safe?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "Good." Then neither of them hung up right away. Winter softened into spring. The Bellwether Museum reopened under a new name, the Lucia Belandi Center for Art and Justice. On opening night, there was no red carpet, No champagne tower. No billionaire chairman smiling beneath stolen chandeliers. Instead, there were students, guards, restorers, nurses, teachers, mothers with children, old men in worn coats, women who had never felt welcome in museums before, and at the center of the main gallery hung the saint beneath glass, restored, protected, and finally credited correctly. Lucia Belandi. Maya stood in front of the painting after the crowd thinned, wearing a deep green dress that made her feel nervous and beautiful at the same time. She heard Dante before she saw him. Not footsteps. Silence changing shape. He stopped beside her, hands behind his back, still not touching the glass. Maya smiled. You really did learn. I had a strict teacher. She sounds impressive. She terrifies me. Maya looked at him. Dante Russo in a black suit beneath museum lights was still the kind of man people stepped away from. Still dangerous. Still powerful. Still carrying shadows that would never fully leave him. But when he looked at Maya now, there was no calculation, only devotion restrained by respect. You donated your ownership share to the foundation, she said. Yes, that museum cost you a fortune. I have several. Museums? Fortunes. She tried not to smile. He failed not to watch her. Why? She asked. Dante looked at the painting. Because I spent my life believing possession was protection. My mother's painting taught me otherwise. His eyes returned to her. So did you. Maya's throat tightened. The gallery was quiet around them. Soft footsteps in distant halls. Rain tapping gently against the tall windows. A city still dangerous beyond the glass. Dante reached into his coat and removed something small. Not a ring. A museum badge. Maya's old security nameplate. The brass was scratched. The black lettering faded at one edge. Maya Collins. Security. I kept it, he said. She laughed softly, emotional despite herself. Of course you did. I thought about framing it. That would be deeply strange. I am aware. She took the badge from his hand. Their fingers brushed. The first night they met came back to her in fragments. The painting, the frozen room, her raised hand, his dangerous eyes, the whole world expecting punishment. Instead, he had seen her, not completely, not correctly, not at first, but enough to begin. Maya looked up at him. You know I'm still not yours. Dante's expression softened in that almost invisible way. Only she recognized. I know. And if I stay, it won't be because you protected me. I know. And I will still tell you no. His voice lowered. I would expect nothing less. She stepped closer. This time, he was the one who went still. Maya lifted her hand and touched the lapel of his suit. Dante looked down at her fingers like they had more power than any weapon ever aimed at him. You once told me to run if I was wise, she said. I did. I'm still not wise around beautiful things. His breath changed. Maya. She rose onto her toes and kissed him, not because he demanded it, not because danger forced it, because after all the fear, all the secrets, all the bloodless cruelty of rooms that had tried to erase her, Maya Collins chose. Dante did not move for half a second. Then his hand settled at her waist, careful and reverent, as if the woman in his arms was more priceless than every painting in the world. The kiss was slow, restrained, a promise made in silence. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. I bought a museum for you, he murmured. Maya smiled. No, you bought a museum because I stopped you from touching a painting. His eyes warmed. And then? And then you learned the difference between owning something and loving it. Dante looked at her, as if she had reached into the darkest room of him, and turned on a light. Outside, rain streaked the glass. Inside, Lucia Belandi's saint watched over them with her hidden hand, finally revealed, her truth no longer buried beneath paint and silence. Maya leaned into Dante's arms, not swallowed by his darkness, not saved by his power, but standing beside him as the woman who had once raised her hand and told the most feared man in Philadelphia no, and Dante Russo, who had built an empire on fear, held her like a man who had finally found something he did not want to conquer, only protect, only cherish, only come home to. In the quiet museum, beneath the painting that had started a war and ended a curse, Maya whispered, "Don't touch the glass." Dante smiled against her hair. "I wouldn't dare."